kingdom. But see, I've been thinking, why should we just accept what the secular world does? You know, and we particularly need to think, what is the secular world doing now that might change the way that I teach, right? What's a big emphasis in the world today? Humans are just animals. You came from ape-like creatures. You're just an animal. If we use the criterion made in the image of God, why shouldn't we put man in his own kingdom? To really emphasize to our kids, we are special. We're different than the animals. We're made in God's image. Why shouldn't we be teaching like that? In fact, if you go across the river to the Cincinnati Zoo and visit the ape exhibit, they tell you you're visiting your family. They do. And look, here's what the sign says. We are not, after all, the only beings with personalities and rational thought and emotions. There is no sharp line dividing us from the chimps and other apes. We humans are a part of and not separate from the animal kingdom. See what the world is doing? Indoctrinating kids. That's why we want to have our own zoo here. It's why we want to expand it and put a lot more in there down the back too. And we want a whole savannah area to see some of the area that's cleared there and have giraffes. And we want to have it all from a biblical worldview perspective, because this is what they're being taught at the secular zoos. Man is just an animal. And by the way, there is no sharp line dividing us from the chimps and other apes. Every zoo I've gone to has a very sharp line. You can point out the inconsistency to your kids, by the way. Why shouldn't we have 7 kingdoms? Now, in reproduction, sexual reproduction, human reproduction, you get DNA from the mother, DNA from the father. This is a little bit of the animation from our Fearfully and Wonderfully Made exhibit at the Creation Museum. And when you have fertilization, here's the interesting point. When you have fertilization, you have a unique combination of information different to the mother, so it can't be part of the mother's body. The DNA is different. It's a different combination, different to the father. And as that fertilized egg builds our body, no new information is ever added, which means all the information that builds you is there at fertilization. So you're made in God's image, and God says about humans, do not murder. Abortion is killing a human being right from fertilization. Now, do you know what they'll throw up at you? Oh, well, God aborts more babies than anybody else because of all the miscarriages and so on. That's where you have to come back and say, wait a minute, we live in a fallen world. We caused that because we sinned against God. And then they were bringing up this week on TV, the news, they're yelling out, oh, it's a parasite. Well, that means they were a parasite. I mean, they are so illogical, right? So illogical. And did you hear them shouting outside one of the Supreme Court justices' homes, kill the baby, kill? They're not even hiding it anymore. To them, it's child sacrifice to the God of self. They were chanting, kill the baby, kill the baby. I mean, depravity for us all to see. The heart of man is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. The total depravity of man is on full show in this nation right now. And you know, how does God view the developing child in a mother's womb? You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your eyes saw my unformed substance, says the psalmist. While you were unformed, your body hadn't formed. When you look at the Fearfully and Wonderfully Made exhibit, you see the stages of development there. But God says it's you. And then you got the world chanting, my body, my rights. Kamala Harris tweeted not long ago, the right of women to make decisions about their own bodies is not negotiable. The right of women to make decisions about their own bodies is their decision, is their bodies. Boy, we're hearing that a lot recently. Interesting how they'll do that when it comes to the abortion issue, but not other mandates. That's right. And how can it be a part of a woman's body when it has a different combination of DNA? And if it's a male, it's got the Y chromosome, which didn't come from the woman. In fact, The woman's body looks on a fertilized egg as foreign tissue to reject, just like if you have a kidney transplant, your body wants to reject it, you take anti-rejection drugs. God built an anti-rejection mechanism into the uterus because the woman's body recognizes it's not her tissue. That's why this exhibit is so important. And you know what? If we haven't taught from the right foundation, what happens? I had a young lady, I'd say she was 18 or so, 18, 19, come out with tears in her eyes after I spoke at the Creation Museum a couple of years ago, and she looked at me and she said, I was brought up in the church all my life. Nobody really taught me anything about being made in God's image and what that meant and different to the animals, and nobody taught me about DNA and the unique combination of information. Nobody taught me about this. She's brought up in the secular education system and so on. She looked at me and she said with tears, what if someone like me's had an abortion? And that's where I said, and when we have in the exhibit, we've got to also talk about the grace of God and love and mercy and forgiveness of God too. If we confess our sins, He's faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. He promised to remove our sins as far as the east is from the west. And He said He will remember them no more. And when I told her that, she had a big smile on her face, like that relief, and off she went. She said, thank you. And I encourage you to